The Nintendo eShop is not the best place to get your games. Come to think of it, it's not really a good place to get your games. Yet even at the bottomest of barrels can be found the creamiest of crops. That's why we here at Jetavision have taken it upon ourselves to scour the depths for eShop exclusives in the hope that maybe one of them is worth playing. Today we're taking a look at Parkour Bullet Frenzy, FPS, physics, slow motion. Because everyone knows there's an art to a good title. People look at this one and they're like, yo, it's an FPS with physics and slow motion. So it's a very simple game. You have to get to the end of the level by going through these obstacle courses, avoiding touching the floor. You gotta jump, climb, grapple, and battle enemies to beat the level. As per the title, you can slow down time, which is clearly intended for more cinematic combat, although frankly the combat is not very cinematic. We mostly used it for timing our jumps better, and as you'll come to see, you really need it. Graphically, the game's obviously very basic, and maybe you can pass it off as something like an aesthetic. You know, maybe it takes place in some training module, but let's be real, it's probably just laziness. Let's hear from the developers themselves. The labyrinths and platforms are designed in a minimalist yet stylish cybernetic aesthetic, creating the atmosphere of a high-tech world. Right. A lot of words just to say you didn't at least want to spring for some pre-made assets. Gameplay's pretty bad. For starters, the mere act of movement feels floaty. When you make a parkour game, you want the player to feel like the character they're controlling is actually running, moving, and jumping. But the game doesn't really sell the feeling of movement. I'd more describe it like a camera attached to one of those cranes, like on a movie set, or like a drone. But past that, the challenges in these levels are just awful. First of all, they are constantly reused. The game seems to really love this wall, that you gotta do this 180-degree jump to get past, and you can never get it right like 75% of the time because you can't turn fast enough. And then you have these orange buttons that you have to like directly aim at to jump on, and you have to be really specific with it, and so most of the time you just fall. And even when you do latch onto them, you only have half a second to plan your next move. So more often than not, you end up falling anyways. This is an obstacle you need to use slow motion for, and even then it's a bit. And then you have these platforms that crumble underneath your feet, and if you don't land on them right, you die. And the worst part is, they're mostly past these walls where they aren't visible. So by the time you figure out they're there, it's too late. The most grating part about this game is the lack of checkpoints. When you die, you go back to the beginning of the level, meaning all that work you spent clearing those annoying obstacles is for nothing. You gotta do it all over again. It's enough to break a man. As mentioned before, the game has combat, I guess. You have a knife, pistol, and rifle. Look, Ma, no hands. It's practically impossible to aim, and there's no damage indicator or health bar, so you never know how much health you have at a given point. Luckily, you can just run past everyone and it doesn't even matter. It's worth noting there's no reload button either. If you want to switch out, you've got to empty the rest of your magazine. We played this game for about an hour. We made it to level 6 out of 12, and the reason for that is because once we saw this final stretch, we noped out. These stupid orange buttons are just the worst. We're not subjecting ourselves to it. So when the question's asked, bottom of the barrel or cream of the crop, you'd best believe we're going bottom of the barrel. A so-called parkour game where you don't even feel like you're parkouring, obnoxious obstacles, and pitiful combat. It feels more like a prototype rather than an actual game, more so a way to test out a game's mechanics before making the real deal. And those basic environments and almost certainly pre-made assets don't help. Even at a low price of $5, you're better off looking for another way to spend that Abraham Lincoln. Now if you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. You've just watched a video from the Jetavision. If you want to keep up to date with our latest, subscribe to the channel, follow the Twitter, and join the Discord. Mac Cheese to Jetavision, signing out. You all have a good one.